I did already open this when I got there to pick it up because I was worried they didn't throw in hardened bushings, which is exactly what I asked for. So they've got to send those out, but we can still get this all set up on the machine, and then I can pull this thumb off at a later date, machine that bit off there, and put my hardened bushing in. It's sort of made for both. But all right, let's rip it out the box and get a better look at this thing. Well, there it is in all its glory. It's just your basic pin-on hydraulic thumb. It come with everything we're going to need to install it on the machine. It even came with 2 new couplers. I didn't think it came with these. And one feature I like straight off the bat is it has a built-on relief valve for both functions built onto the cylinder here. I will have to shorten these hydraulic hoses. So once we get the thumb all installed on the machine, I'll have to just run down to the hydraulic joint, cut them to the length we need. I've still got to buy a 2-way valve so I can have the 2 thumb hoses into that valve, and then on the other side of that valve I can have our couplers, so if I want to run something auxiliary I can just turn that valve and you don't have to mess with pulling hoses off and whatnot. But anyway, I'm going to go grab the machine. I'll bring it around here because we have to cut off the old manual grab mount that's on the dipper arm on the machine now. So I'll pull that around and we'll start pulling that off. So here's the other mount we've got to bust off. The weld's actually quite small on it. Like, a fair bit of undercut in that one. I'm probably going to have to fill that arm back up with weld and then grind it back flat. But that should come off nice and easy, I think. I won't even need the 9-inch to pull that off. Coming now. I went into the arm a little bit there, but the good thing is we've got all this here to brace it. Through there is the worry point, because there's nothing behind this. That's where a crack can start. So I'll see where that mount is going to sit. I'm gathering it's probably going to want to be sitting near enough in the same spot, maybe a tad higher. We'll just gouge that out and weld that back all, weld it all back up. I think if we just slide this forward, there should be enough room to sit the hitch here, and we can sort of set it all up on the bench. What we're going to have to do, we're going to have to set it all up and see how my pin is fixed in the hitch here. We're going to have to pretty much put this pin in the lathe, machine off this flange here, and then I'll probably use that boss, machine that down, because this pin is going to have to be fixed to the hitch so it doesn't flog the hitch out, because the hitch doesn't have hardened bushings in it and the bottom of the dipper arm does. So I'll probably sit maybe a grease fitting in there, because I'm not happy with how they've done the grease. Like, they've just grinded that out and then put the grease fitting in the end here, drilled a hole, so you're not going to be able to run pressure up there and push the grease out each side of that hardened bushing in there. Like, that's this thumb was about the cheapest hydraulic one I could get, so you can't complain too much. So I think I'll put the grease fitting in the bottom of the dipper arm. This pin is still runnable. This grease fitting you won't use, you'll obviously use it in there. And then yeah, so let's bust this pin out. We're gonna have to machine this off. Or actually we might set it all up and just see how much room we've got with this boss here. That pin should, yeah, slip right out. Easy as that. If only I had a rag. Now, there's any shims in there. Not that I can see. We won't be needing this for a while, so we'll just put that to the side, but this pin can pretty much come out now. So overall, 245, 225. So those, we're gonna have to, geez, this is a lot wider than, I think let's just put it on as is for the minute. Yeah, look, we've got a lot of distance. That's not right. I'm going to quickly check the measurements I sent the company, because that hangs out way too far. If I've got to dig a trench or something, like, those ears are going to just get in the way real quick. So I've just spent the last 15 minutes mucking around measuring this all out, and they've made the thumb 45mm too wide. So I've allowed for a 27mm boss that would go in this spot here that you can see that gap, and that's what the bolt would go through, and that's what would stop it. This flange would have to weld that boss to this flange here, so when you pull the pin, this would fall off and you'd undo that screw. And I've got 27 mil there, and that you got to have that because we've got to boss this side, we've got to equal it that side so the thumb sits true in the center of the dipper arm. And all this is excess that we don't need, and that is 45 mil, which is just way too wide. So I'm gonna have to call them next week because it's Saturday now, and I really wanted to get this installed today, and I'm not gonna be able to. So I'm gonna have to just leave it as it is, call them and see what they're gonna say, because well, I'm sure you can tell from the time lapse that we're hacking this up ourselves. I didn't want to send it out and it come back and be wrong again, so I'm just going to fix it myself, set it up on the machine, and that way we know it's right. So the ear is pretty much going to be sitting way in there more. There's going to be a lot less bend in here because this bend makes it weaker. I know I've just cut down it. We're also going to have to make a cut in here, heat this steel up here and bend it back around more. I'm hoping by the end of it we can make it look like we've not really modified it. Well, that's the goal anyway. Like that. That might be enough. I was going to say that might be enough. And you want to watch this, we're bending it up there a bit. So you really need to use you want to use that instead. That's probably right there. As good as we're going to get it without destroying the side of it. The weather has turned for the worst. The whole backyard's flooded. But I've pretty much got this tacked up to where I want it. You can see we're pretty much in line there. I've got a nice gap to fill with weld. We've used these to get these ears true. And these aren't quite 90 degree from factory. So we're sort of, the most important part is, this part is 90 degree. So it sits flat when this pin goes through. And then we've leveled this pin up to the face of, or the top of the thumb, so that way when you pull it up to the dipper arm it sits square and true, and basically it's pretty much ready to weld out. It almost looks as if we haven't touched it. I did splash a little bit of black paint on there just to stop it from rusting, but this is going to get painted with the machine all yellow, so I didn't stress too much on cleaning it up or anything, because the bloke will do that when he paints it. But this is pretty much ready to get put back on. So that side's all done. That's going to look something pretty much like that. Now we've got that set up, we can measure the distance for our boss, but the bottom's going to have to be stepped here to sit in that groove that you see, and then we'll just cut this flange off. It'll probably get cut off here somewhere, and we'll just weld it on the side. I just don't want to weld the boss to the hitch, because if I ever want to take this thumb off, I can just order a new pin straight from Yanmar, slide it in, and I'm good to go again. So we just get this. It's going to be hard with this because we haven't got much material to work with to sort of get it accurate. It doesn't have to be accurate because we need to leave enough room for grease to get on these surfaces here. So I think if we just go something like that, that's got to be good enough for this. What do we got? Where's the vernier? We've got exactly 2470 or 24.7, which is fine. So I'll probably bring that to 2450, leave a little bit, like I said, for grease. Plus there's going to be a little bit in this ear from where we've welded it. It's not going to be completely true, so we've got to allow for that as well. I might even make it 24 because the other side's tight. That gives us 0.5 mil each side. We'll do that. So this is about the only bit I got. It's slightly bigger diameter than what we need, which is good. But I'm not going to be able to run the live. So there's the end result, and this bush should sit in there. So you can see how much of that flange off the pin, wherever it's gone, that was in here, how much we're going to have to cut and then weld that to that. So I went ahead and set this all back up. I've got our bolt in our boss now. I've put the flange there, so I cut that ready for welding, and that's pretty much how it's going to look. Now I only want an 8mm size bolt to try and keep as much strength in our pin as possible, because we've got a cantilever here. So I'm going to bust out the welder, we'll weld that, and then we can pull it off, cut our pin to size, and pretty much put a circlip at the end, and this is going to be done. Now I'm going to have to let that cool for a bit, because it's going to try and pull that out once it as it's cooling. And then I'm going to try and get a little bit of weld in the back, and I'll probably have to grind it out a little bit. But I'm happy with that. At least I'm not going to wear out my hitch now. I was a little bit worried that the thumb was going to hit the top arm here, because we've got the quick hitch on it. Because this point to here is about 200mm, this has to be 200mm more. So if you don't have a hydraulic hitch and the bucket's just on the bottom of the dipper, that thumb can be like 200mm shorter. It'd be down here. But I'd say that's why they've got that check out there, is to make sure. But it doesn't go too much more, curl too much more, so I think that's fine. Oh, there's a mess. Did not know they were loose. They're both loose. So far, not. Well, I got that welded on, and because I'm under the laser light here, the glare from the sun, I was like welding down, and then started skewing out. And then I went straight again, and then I did it again on this side. Oh man, what a rookie. Look, goes nice all the way down, then I just go, that's all right. I got real nice penetration on that, so that's not going anywhere. I'm not welding the top, because that's how cracks start. I don't know how long this lever's going to last, but I wanted it really simple. I didn't want to have to, like this here, this has got a a ball valve on it. You need a shifter for it, and then you've got to have a shifter floating around on the excavator. And if you're out in the middle or somewhere and you don't have one, well then you're stuck. So we'll just see how long they last. But check out this weather. Yesterday was like 35 degrees, sweating all day, and today is just absolutely pouring with rain. Crazy. So I just cut the end of the pin off in the cold saw. Now we'll just face it. I actually didn't have my camera. Oh, what's going on? I didn't have my camera going. I did, I don't know what I got on camera and what I didn't, but I did put that snap ring groove in there. Like I said a second ago, we just got to face it. I'll just put an edge on there because this end is what's going to be getting pushed through the through everything, so it's got to sort of have a bit of a taper on it, and then everything's ready to literally get put back together finally. Just quickly before we go putting this pin back in, now I did say I was going to put the grease fitting in the bottom of the dipper arm, but I've changed my mind. I've ordered a long drill bit that's going to reach right up to the center of this pin. I'll just fill that hole there with weld. That way when we grease it, it's going to come out in the proper spot, because like I said earlier, as it is now, it's got to try and pump grease from this hole here up this groove all the way to the other side of the hardened bushing, which sits about here, and grease is not gonna, it's gonna want to just spread out all here, and like you'll get a little bit, but not the proper greasing. So So I've got our circlip on there now, and I made that spacer up, which is the same as the other one there, so it sort of matches. I also double nutted that bolt through there. I will get them zinc plated at a later date, those spacers, because they're just raw steel. They will rust up in no time. But I've still got to pull all this apart again because I need to put the hardened bushings in there, and like I said earlier, I've got to do the grease fitting in this pin. But I'm not going to pull it all apart until the guy comes out to paint the rest of the machine, because I want to pull that cylinder off. I've got to undo these nuts and swing that out the way for him, and take a few little things off for him. So I'll do it all at the one time, so that way I'm not doing it another 3 or 4 times, taking it off and on and off and on. So, but I think now let's fire the machine up and give this a whirl. We've got our first leak. Oopsie, I forgot to tighten this up. I tell you what, this thumb is going to be the death of me. We've got a huge gap here between the teeth and it hits on the bucket. And I've got other buckets which the ears aren't so big, but I want it to work with all my buckets. Like the cylinder needed to be moved up further, or I did ask the company that I bought it off, I've got a Yanmar, it fit in there, they're like, yeah, no worries, it'll fit. I'm probably going to have to... The whole reason I put this thumb on this machine is me and my partner are looking for a piece of property, and we're pretty much ready to go when the right one arrives. And where we're looking, there's a lot of tree work going to be needing done. I'm looking at a minimum 40 acres, so I want this ready to go, and we're going to... I don't know what we're going to do here. We're going to have to either redesign it, or I just get a whole new thumb laser cut to exactly how I want it, which is what I was originally going to do. Well, I'm going to go and have a bit of a think about that, and we're going to have to come back to this, I think.